So I noticed that depending on, specifically, it seems like the level of finances you have, so money, but it's also depending on other things, like just kind of like the level of life you're at. That's dictated by health and strength and experience and lots of things, right? But this pretty much will dictate what your state is, and what your state is depends on what you can do. For example, a person in a very high state will be more receptive to creative pursuits, intellectual pursuits, spirituality, to travel, etc. If you look at, for example, like the archetypal hippies who travel across the world and they're very interested in like art and spirituality, and because of the use of drugs usually, so drugs take people to higher states and they kind of make you think. It's like they fool your biological circuitry, let's just say programming, to make you think that you're in a higher state than you actually are. So, a lot of these hippies are poor, or the ones who aren't poor, because there's a lot of them that are like trust fund kids, or they've got they've got money saved, they've got money somehow, right? Because it takes money to travel, a lot of money nowadays, right? So somehow they have money, usually, unless they're like getting other people to pay for it, right? Or they're on enough drugs that it overloads the programming, that it lets them think, okay, we can travel, like we have the money to travel, we're at the state of life where we can, or let's focus on music or spirituality or something, right? Which, if you're at a lower state, your biological programming is telling you, we don't have time for that. We don't have time to travel. Our life is a mess. Our body's a mess. Our home, if you have one, is a mess. Like, you need to interface with reality first, with what is here. You can't just go escape offward. You can't just go have fun or whatever, right? And of course, different people will react differently and have different circuitry. For example, some people live in absolute filth, but they just kind of ignore it almost, which is an ignoring of the lower parts of the body, because of course this all relates to the body. You can think like the spine is the rainbow, the totem pole or bridge or ladder or whatever, right? And the more artistic, intellectual, spiritual pursuits are above the heart, or above the chest and the head, right? While material stuff is more survival, is more below the belly. Okay, so the basic hierarchy that I figured out is essentially this. So number one is, firstly, you are in survival state. This is, of course, root chakra, like lowest level, the bowel, etc. This is either when you're in a state of absolute panic and fear and, just ruined, or when you're very hungry, when you're very tired, thirsty, even states of lust, extreme lust. Essentially, it is biological programming is telling you to satisfy your body, satisfy the animal, and usually this comes down to an energy requirement, or to stabilize yourself, sleep, and to say if you're highly emotional, you need to relax and stabilize yourself, right? You're in fear state or whatever. So it's some kind of body thing, usually lower body. Once you satisfy this instinct by eating and sleeping and drinking and all that, then it goes more. And of course, this ties into money, because at least in places like America and Americanized places, Australia, Canada, UK, etc., or just Englishized, Americanized and Englishized, everything's about commerce and trade, and it's very, commercial and all this kind of stuff. It's all about money. So money is the god of these lands, is the ruler. So trade and businesses, is the lord or the ruler of these places, to an extent. Each country has its own thing, but going on. So, of course, you need a certain amount of money to satisfy the base instincts. And people who are like homeless, so homelessness triggers you and puts you into a low state. And of course, a lot of homeless are getting welfare, and some of them are even getting like free housing and all this kind of stuff. So that's like a satisfaction of that. Similarly, a lot of them are on like painkillers and such to satisfy the root. So once you satisfy your root desires, your survival desires, you move into the next, we think the bladder center. And this is kind of like, what do you do when you've eaten or you've slept, you kind of satisfied yourself? You kind of need you need more, so to speak, or you need, really the way I describe this is acquiring money. So again, tying it to finances, it's just step 2 is acquiring money. All right, so you've got enough money to satisfy your living to live, but then you need more money, right? You want more. And of course, pleasure can get here. This is where people can get trapped into drug addiction, and they lose, and that's their life now, because they're just trapped in a pleasure hole. People who are stuck here are they're seekers of pleasure. This is the bridge to the third state, which is belly, the yellow, the stomach to an extent, the ego. It's related to the ego. And really what this means in practical financial terms is that in these first world countries, you need a car to work. And if you run a business, you need whatever devices for your business. Basically everyone needs a car and a phone, a computer and a car, right? And also, I guess you would say a house, some kind of place to live, right? But really, it's all the tools and devices you need. What do you need for your work? If you're running a vacuuming or cleaning business, you need a steam cleaner, you need an industrial vacuum, you need all cleaning fluids and such, bags and whatever else, right? The stuff you need to functionally do your work. So the game plan is, of course, you satisfy yourself. So you satisfy your body, level 1. You build up tons of cash, level 2. You then satisfy the requirements, because this could also be licensing, right? Any kind of regulation, licensing, things you just need to do and need to get to then do stuff, which again, looking at financially, is your work and your business. Education is technically higher, but you could also maybe to an extent say training and skills. Now, the pitfalls of this third level, of course, as I said, it's ego. So you can get lost into, well, I'm the kind of person who drives this car, and that's where you start spending all your money, and I'm the kind of person who wears these clothes, and I'm the kind of person who does all these things, and owns this, this watch, and all these status signaling things, because that's what, for example, watches, cars, shoes, all this fancy shit, all these clothes, it's a signal of status, and usually it's done by men. Instead, women, so men signal status artificially through consumer products, right? That's what consumer products for men, all these advertisements, is saying, hey, you're gonna look cool if you smoke or drink. You're gonna look cool in your new, Ferrari, your fast car, right? You're gonna look good in these fancy designer shoes and jackets and whatever. Ultimately, it comes down to you're gonna look good to women. Or you're going to look good to a boss, to other people usually. It's kind of getting you almost to a social level. And for women, it's all focused around beauty, which ultimately is fertility, which is health. So, makeup, for example, clothes, getting hair and nail, all this artificial stuff, and personally I don't like it. I don't like any of this. What do you want to do? Do you want to touch the face of a woman and you just get your thumb gets oily, or you want to touch their hair and it's there's all this crap, and it's that's nasty. You want to touch their fingers and it's they got fake nails or paint's chipping off. That's really it's just, to me, it's just kind of nasty, but whatever. it's the same way that, like, you know, if a guy has like a sports car, it's like, do you realize that? Do you realize how much maintenance you got to do in it? Like, do you realize it has a 5-liter fuel tank? It's really not made for like transporting stuff. Do you realize how inefficient? Like, if you're a race car driver, go nuts. You know, you want to drive on a track, you know, go nuts. But it's like, for daily commuting, it doesn't really work. It's the same thing, you know, all this designer crap, all this like fancy watch. It's like, oh, you want a gold chain, you know, someone could just grab, like, can you protect that? Or can someone walk up to you, grab that chain, rip it right off your neck, and you're how many of 1,000 down? So all this stuff, it's again, it's artificial, but it triggers our drives. That's the thing, it triggers our drives. And of course, for women, it's that they want to attract men, and they also want to be impressed. They want to impress other women, you know. They want it to, again, it's a beauty or a seat for them. It's like a feminine status signal, you can say. And of course, women's status is different to men's. Men's is more career status. Sometimes women get lost in career. I guess this whole level could be career-based as well, level 3. Sometimes women get lost into career, thinking that if I go up the hierarchy, men will like me, you know, my family will like me. I will satisfy my biological desire to have a family, and it doesn't work. The opposite can happen to men as well, where groom themselves, they over-groom themselves, and they over-focus on beauty, and think, if I only look more beautiful, women will love me, you know, but it's like, it doesn't work out. So, there's different, you know, there's a lot of like things that can get tangled, like a lot of cords that can get tangled, or the programming gets screwed up here. Ultimately, what it comes down to is essentially just succeeding in your career, and that means having the things, the skills, the devices, the tools, if you need to know people, whatever. It's like securing your position in society to an extent. And then it takes you to step 4. What happens when someone has satisfied security, money, career, and they've integrated into society? Of course, they marry, they have a family. So step 4, of course, is satisfying family. And here's the thing, depending on your level of finances, and depending on your level, your age, your experience in life, your health, all these things will dictate what you are psychologically, meaning mentally, you're kind of thinking about what, you know, and what also you're ready for and you're able to acquire. So mind you, as you go up, you're going to, it's like if you got a bunch of cash, you got like $1 million, it'll be like, ooh, maybe I want to go on a trip, maybe I want to buy all these things, maybe I want to just like sit at home and just work on my like creative pursuits or intellectual pursuits. Maybe I just want to, you know, just like quit my job and become like a monk, you know, like depending on what that stimulates then, because you've got so much root pressure. Because again, money, it's like the pressure in the body that pushes up. It's like the mercury in the thermometer, right? It's the spinal cord. Going on to its family is, and mind you, this is then the lower levels are more self-serving, they're more selfish. So if a person is more selfish and self-serving, their money's all to themselves, their resource and time is all to themselves, they're more in the lower levels. So they then have a family, and mind you, men have to go through the bottom 3 a lot more. That's the test of men. Women, to an extent, used to start at level 4. So women didn't have to really go through the bottom 3. Like that was kind of satisfied by their family. That's before women became like a societal unit, so to speak, because it used to be the family. You know, people say like, oh well, men had all the power, men this, men vote, but no, it was the family. The family was a unit, and of course the man was the face of the family. He was the front, you know, he had to well, technically the woman, you know, when you think is the face, you know, and the man's like the driver of it. Point being, he interfaced with society. So it's a bit like, you know, men would vote, but the vote would be from the family. Men would own property, but the property would be for the family. You know, men, all these things, it would be a family decision, right? But now women are a unit of society, so it's men are a unit and women are a unit. You know, once you become over 18, you become a legal citizen, right? And you become a unit of society. Women also have to engage in the lower three levels, because, you know, if you leave your home as a woman and you have to focus on survival again, well, you're in the lower world. Well, usually as a man, you would probably have to, you know, leave the family home, or you would have to take it on, you know, and you would have to be the responsible one for that. Your wife, of course, she has to eat, but she eats from the food you would give her, right? So and any money she would have, you would probably give her. So you're satisfying, you know, she needs the stuff, tools to sew, tools to cook, tools to garden, tools to medicinal tools, maybe, you know, grooming tools, whatever it happens to be, you know, soap. She would get it from you. So you're usually the man would satisfy the lower three levels of the woman, right? It still is that way technically. You know, once you marry, it's like, what, you're gonna force your wife to work and buy her and stuff, and, you know, probably not. You're probably gonna handle that. If you have enough money and you have enough power, right? You want to do that. It's more so if you're a poorer family, or you run a family business and you want, you know, everyone's integrated, that your wife is focusing on the money aspect, which is the lower, you know, that's like the energy or the power, right? But otherwise, usually the man handles the power. So then we have, as I said, family, which is level 4, which is the middle ground, you know, the green, the heart, well, or you can think like the stomach, depending on how you want to think about it. It's the center. As I said, for a man to reach this point, for a man to get a wife and have children, means he's pretty much succeeded at the biological game. A woman is always going to be valued sexually and to make children with, unless she's too old, right? So you can also think the older women get, the lower they potentially can fall, because if they're no longer valued for the level 4, which is the family, then they're going to fall into needing to get their own resources and such, you know. While a man getting older will go higher, assuming he's working hard. Women start at the top, men start at the bottom, but they meet each other in the middle. Of course, as a man raises his value and status, and, you know, he goes up, and as a woman, if she lowers it by doing, you know, inappropriate things, she goes down. Of course, if a man lowers his, he goes down as well. And of course, a woman can raise hers, but there is a thing of women kind of subjected to time more than men. So going on is number 4. Now, number 4, I think, as like travel, right? Travel and teaching, we get to like the throat. So this is where you secured your family, you've secured your business, your survival, your money, all this stuff, and you have the money to travel. Because if you save up money for a trip, but you don't have a car to work a proper job, or you don't have, you know, whatever tools you need, like drills, and, you know, maybe you run a gardening business and you need a good chainsaw or something, but you go take a trip to some other country, you know, being nice and leisurely, or your home, you know, level 1, your home, you don't have enough like meat stored up and other food and grains and such, but you're instead spending money on a trip. It's a bit like, what are you doing? Also, more so in the past, this would be like buying books. You got to think books are expensive, right? So it's like putting money into education. You could spend your money learning about, I don't know, the physics of like rockets or something, or you could just go buy some ground meat, you know, like, do you want to satisfy your lower area, or do you want to learn about rockets, you know? And of course, if you are lower in this hierarchy, you're going to want food, and that's probably a good thing. You probably need food, right? If you're higher, you're going to be like, oh, well, maybe I'll go learn something, or take a course, buy a book, get a video series on, you know, whatever thing, right? So you're going to be more prompted to do that. Similarly, like taking a trip somewhere might be good, because it can help you to learn. But of course, you need your house you're all fixed and satisfied, because what if something collapses while you're away? What if you don't have people, which is your family, to care for that house, or to care for your children, or to care for your business? Usually you'd have your children running the business, keeping everything maintained, right? So you have people under you already, and now you can go learn things and you can go travel. And the same way I said with the hippies, they take a lot of drugs, and it keeps them in this higher state because it's raising their lower energies. And of course, lower energies is the reproductive, at least one of them is the reproductive substances, and of course the things in the lower bowels and bladders and such, intestines and all that. It's drawing up the nutrients from all those areas into the higher areas. When you use drugs, that's pretty much partly what it's doing. Partly, of course, it's going to make you think that you're in a higher state. So that's why they spend their money on traveling and education and spirituality and whatever scientific and blah 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 pursuit that they might want to do, or spiritual or artistic, whatever, while they actually need food, while maybe they just need sleep. If you take a stimulant, you don't want to sleep anymore, right? But your body needs it. Going on, number 6 is mind, the head, the brain. It's related to creativity and so artistic and scientific pursuits, essentially. Buying a bunch of lab equipment to investigate the world, or sitting around painting, isn't exactly the best use of your time when you are hungry or tired, or when you do not have a family set up, right? Technically, you're wasting your time in a way, because you need to be kind of securing yourself a little more. So, and of course, there are people who will forego all these things and instead perform, these things. And sometimes they do it because they think they can get the lower things. Chances are you're not going to make money off the higher things. Now, not until you've satisfied the lower things. There are people who make money off travel. There are people who make money off education. There are people who make money off scientific pursuits, artistic pursuits, and spiritual pursuits. You've got these main things, right? But if you don't know business, if you haven't ran a business for years and you know the ins and outs of that, if you don't understand society, if you've got a shit house which is falling apart and you're just stressed all the time because it's just a nightmare, it's not going to work. It's probably not going to work. I'm not saying it never will, but it's probably not going to work. You need to get your lower self secured and satisfied first. But once people are satisfied with these things, maybe let's take level 5, they've traveled around a bunch and they've studied and read a bunch of things. That'll make them more curious, and they want to express that energy in, again, artistic or science, some kind of intellectual pursuit, some kind of higher level thing, right? But until because you've got to think, a lot of people are stuck at level 3 and 4. Technically, it's people stuck at, homeless people are stuck at 1, people who are pleasure seekers stuck at 2, people who are obsessed with work stuck at 3, people who just very family orientated, very group orientated stuck at 4. There's not a lot of people at 5, 6, and 7. There's more people at 5 than at 6, and there's more people at 6 than at 7. But a lot of people in, maybe I would say, around 2, 3, and 4. A lot of people there, and then maybe 5, and then maybe 1, and then 6 and 7, right? Then finally 7 is spiritual pursuits. You'll notice when people they've just done everything. They've got all kinds of cash. They've had a family. They've just done, they've figured out everything, they've studied everything, they eventually will find God or find spirituality, whatever that means to them. Really, this is like the higher pursuits, the more, when you start questioning the nature of reality, there's not really a point to questioning how the world came about or what is God or any of these things until it's like, if you're hungry and you need to cook food, but you're just sitting there thinking about the nature of reality, that's not a very smart thing. That means your biological programming is messed up. There's nothing wrong about thinking about these things, and it's an interesting question. But if you need to make money and pay your bills, or you need to feed your kids or something, it's not a good thing. So a lot of the times people can be messed up with these things, and of course people are simultaneously in all levels at once, because we are all of these levels, right? As in, they're all in our body. These are our organs, these are our spines, vertebrae. These are all different parts of the body, all different parts of the world, the ground, the sky, the oceans, etc. All the colors, it all relates to everything. So we simultaneously are expressing and experiencing and taking in and going through different parts of this during life. Sometimes you'll see your family, sometimes you'll work, sometimes you'll kind of sit there and just philosophize, sometimes you'll be creative, sometimes you'll just eat and shit, sleep, sometimes you will focus on sex and pleasure and things that are nice and feel good. We all are experiencing these things simultaneously, so of course people are going to do higher things even when they haven't fully satisfied the lower. And then it's like, when can you say you've completely satisfied something? Of course there are levels. You can eat, and once you eat, you're good. Assuming you eat something high enough, nutriently dense, then you will temporarily satisfy that bottom level. Similar way, you can have a family, and that means you fundamentally have, to some extent, satisfied that family level. Maybe you want a bigger family, maybe you want a smaller family, maybe you want more time with them, right? You want to orientate your life more around them. So you got to feel into your body and ask yourself and think, what am I satisfying, what am I not? Do I have time to be philosophizing, or to travel, or to learn, or to, be playing the guitar right now? Or am I working too much on business? Am I working too much on pleasure, on survival? Am I focusing too much on these things, right? Of course, usually, put it this way, level 1, survival, it's usually never a bad thing to satisfy that, to over-satisfy it. Level 3, business, usually it's never a bad thing to over-satisfy that, unless you start buying designer nonsense or overdoing it with the cosmetics or whatever, and getting trapped into an ego hole. And then level 5, I don't think traveling is a very good thing. It's a terrible waste of time if you're not at that level. Learning is usually not a bad thing. It's usually not a bad use of time to learn things, right? It can be if you spend too much time doing it. And then spirituality, so it's like you kind of miss the steps. So it's like level 2, technically money is always good. You can get lost in it. And I guess, I don't know. Look, all of them have their good sides, because even family, money, and I guess mental pursuits, they all can be good. So I guess I can't really say that, never mind about that idea. Look, you probably get the point, right? To apply this to your own life, maybe you can write down which of these you're lacking in, which of these you've satisfied, and usually it's a bottom up. It's a bottom up or top down. Because you can think, as I said, with men and women, women, because they're more satisfied in the lower areas from their family, they can do intellectual or creative pursuits, right? They can do a little more learning. And that's the thing with, you think first world countries are meant to be satisfying the lower areas, you think that the family is satisfying the desire of money and tools and devices and whatever, and food for the child, so the child can just focus on their studies, their higher pursuits. While in a poorer country, the child might need to hustle a bit more, trying to make money, so they learn lower things. Now, of course, a child that does not know how to make money and do and eat and all that is going to be kind of useless, even if they're very smart. So it's like that's what we've created in the West, because now things have like cycled where it's very expensive to live in the West, or technically not the West, it's what we call first world countries, because they are a cost of living farm. And to put a long story short, essentially immigration labor is actually a form of slave labor. Technically we're all slaves because no one owns land, but that's a whole other story. Going back to it, you get a bunch of quote unquote slaves, financial slaves, which are immigrant labor, and then cost of living goes up, and now because cost of living goes up, we all get brought back down to level 1, 2, 3. Instead of, we could have walked the rainbow bridge to the higher levels. But if you look at least where I live, we are not a scientific country, we're not an intellectual country, we are not a... No, when the conversation at the dinner table that most people are having is fucking hell, it's expensive to live, or everyone's kind of on like psychiatric medication, which is to satisfy certain medications satisfy certain levels. The point being, you'd think in a first world country people are at a higher level, but it's actually not the truth. Of course, to an extent, maybe we're higher level than some, other countries, but, that's neither here nor there. And then you can think of it like cities are usually the higher level, like people are focusing on higher levels, while out in the country, they're more out on the lower levels. But there's this opposite, everything's opposite. It's in like, if you're in the country, yeah, you're kind of living more to the land, but also maybe you have more leisure time. While in the city, you don't have as much leisure time, or even though it's more technologically advanced, you're stressed more and you have to focus on the lower, like satisfying the lower levels because you're so stressed and it's expensive. So everything's in like opposites, like zigzags, or and that's a concept you're just gonna have to figure out on your own, which is that absolute hot is cold, absolute cold is hot, or absolute positive is cold, absolute negative is hot, while positive is hot, negative is cold, right? So like it loops in on itself. Just apply it to countries, people, races, ages, even animals if you want to. Birds, they're always talking, they're in their voice. Fish, they're kind of just flowing, level 2, right? Anyway, you get the point. Really just, climb the hierarchy of life. Get your money together, get your everything together. And it all ties into money. Unfortunately, if we had an economy based on singing, I don't know, or talking or something, it'd be how good your voice is or how well you can sing, right? If we had an economy based on strength, it'd be how strong you are, how much work you can do, right? If we had an economy based, or a country based on spirituality, wisdom, it'd be based on those. But we have a world based on money, at least in the first world countries. So you have to be, your money is essentially a relation to where you are in your spinal cord.